This is episode 91 of Michael Jackson's Dream Lives On, an academic conversation. Your hosts are academic Elizabeth Emizu and academic Karin. Today we start a series and return to the dangerous philosophies of Michael Jackson, nearly a decade after its publication, and work through it chapter by chapter. We will have a conversation, and the question running through this series is how we read Michael Jackson today through his music, his public persona, and everything constructed around him since. Wow, Liz, a decade, and
Yes.
still so relevant.
Been 10 years. This is my for the video viewers, this is my Dream Lives On mug.
Your
Got it
mug.
with me today.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, let's go to, because you start with the chronology called Michael Jackson, a Selected Chronology. And you say this chronology has been compiled from a range of sources. It aims to provide an overview of Jackson's career to accompany the academic criticism that has emerged and focused on his career. So your chronology runs from 1958 to
Can we go a little bit further
2016.
back for a second?
Why?
Because we have an epitaph. And I want to talk about it.
When a great poet dies, the immediate critical question is often where to bury him. In the choice between the public tomb and private resting place, a prominent quarter in Westminster Abbey, or the wood-choked corner of a foreign graveyard, posterity makes its first decision about how the poet will be remembered. And often enough, the result has been a scandal. Not even a proper burial can guard against infamy. Milton's bones, for instance, were dug up at the end of the 18th century for souvenirs, just as fragments of his early poems had been exhumed and confiscated by minor poets. Neglected at first, eventually competed for, like Homer, by contending critics. The poet goes to meet his shades, but not unsung. With his dying breath, frequently an industry springs up around him. Memorialists, literary undertakers, chiselers, epitaph makers, the custodians of his fame take charge of manuscripts and the will. He enters his tomb. By Lawrence Lipkin, The Life of the Poet, Beginnings and Endings.
Yeah, it's really powerful, isn't it? Like a really powerful quotation that I thought summarized everything that happened around Michael's life and death, and how his last breath was breathing new life into the things he created, which is really sad and really bittersweet, because obviously we miss him so much. But at the same time, the things he made, he wanted them to live on, and they are, which is really important.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And whilst reading this, I had I'm reading his life. I'm reading how this ended for him. And yeah, it's powerful. It's very powerful. And apparently also not because Michael Jackson, it happened to many
Yeah, so that's
before.
the other thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's to show that what has happened around Michael is not unique to him,
no.
although he was very unique as a person. What's happened is really almost like the traditional thing that happens with poets, great artists. When they die, then an industry springs up around them,
Yeah.
all about what they made.
Yeah. But I think nowadays we are living in a world where everything gets exemplified with social media.
Yeah, there's like a
So
cultural, like I felt of it like it was like a cultural exhumation. And that's a really horrible thing to say. Like it's really
yeah,
grim. It's a really grim thought, but that's kind
yeah,
of what's happened. Like
yeah,
especially with the hologram. that hologram that came out a few years ago. You start to see something of like this attempt to resurrect Michael, which I think is really sad because what we need to do is, I think personally, venerate him and respect the work he made in his lifetime and acknowledge his genius, as opposed to kind of like trying to resurrect him to make him perform for us again and again. I don't think that's the way to go.
No, it never is. But it reads in different ways. It reads in huge loss, something that people still are struggling with. And I can imagine his children and his family too.
Hmm.
And yeah, it is also because we live in a world where technology is at the forefront of almost everything. So there is the ability to actually do that. Because I wonder, in the time of Shakespeare, for instance, or when Lipkins writes this, and that technology had been there, do you think they would have gone that far?
I think they did. They did go that far. They took all his work and they published it, which is like a really big deal. Like they took all his work. Like if they hadn't have published it in the first folio, half of his work would have been lost. So in that attempt to kind of like almost re-energize his oeuvre, you know, they published a lot of, not all of his works, but a lot of his works in the first folio. So obviously I was so inspired by the first folio and the creation of it, um, that so that we get into the contents of the book.
Yeah.
And if you're following with us, we're on page X,
Now, well, let's
or
um,
page IX. So you see the contents page is really, really important for this book. I think like for people who are studying it and reading it, I definitely say, put a little post-it or a little tab on the contents page so you can keep going back to it all the time. Um, and you can see the structure of the text. You can see the structure. Karin said it before about Arthur's life. It has a foreword by Joseph Vogel, foreword by Karin, the acknowledgements, and then obviously we'll talk about all those things today, and then the chronology, and then we're going to go into the introduction. And it's very much a case of building up to something really great. That was the intention. It has two forewords, which is intentional. And I think we start off with, should we move straight into Joseph Vogel's foreword? One of the quotes that I wanted to, illuminate from Joseph Vogel's foreword was Michael Jackson Studies is not only a thing, it is a thing that is thriving. That's at the bottom of page XI. And, I was really proud of this because Joseph Vogel is like a big hero of mine because he wrote Man in the Music, The Creative Life and Work of Michael Jackson. And its forwards are very important for getting books out there and into the public domain and getting people to think about them and read them. And, I like this forward because it talks about how my book is intelligent and illuminating, but it then also talks about the infancy of Michael Jackson studies, and calls the work passionate, keen, and often daring. And I thought that was interesting because somebody else called me a pioneer recently, and I'm learning to take the compliments because it's something I struggled with in the past. But I actually really like this concept of like breaking new ground with the work, with this creative work and this academic work. And I didn't want to aim low. So Joseph Vogel talks about at the bottom of page XII. One thing certain, he did not aim low, Michael. He was not content with a niche audience, very important, and he despised limitations. His art was not intended for everyone, yet it managed to be singular and subversive as anything pop music has seen. A dangerous philosophy indeed. So
yeah,
I thought that that forward is just really important because at the time of the book's publication, Dr. Joseph Vogel was really at the forefront of this work, and he still is very respected today. because of the work he's brought out, and we will talk about his work later on in the book because it's referenced quite heavily in the book, and we'll also talk about his new stuff, some of his new works later on in the podcasts. So stay tuned for that. And then we move on to another foreword. We've got two. Now this foreword was written by Karin. And I wanted to just talk a little bit about Karen's expertise. So Karen is like the obviously host of Dream Lives On, editor of the Journal of Michael Jackson Studies, Academic Studies, but she's also the author of A Festive Parade of Highlights, The Grand Parade as an Evaluation of the Museum Policy of Eddie de Vilder. And I thought this was just really, really important to state because it's something that I don't think I've been able to go into a lot. That Karen's expertise in museum policy makes her uniquely positioned to discuss a book like this. I think it makes her unique in terms of her research focus at the time. We're talking about 10 years ago, but also, her ability to, this book is very much like walking through a museum because you see different pieces of art and they all tell a singular story together. And so, I thought that mirroring of those two ideas was very, very important. And Karen's forward was glowing, and I think it's really, really beautiful. And she really understood the work. And this was at a time when no one had done anything like this. No one had done anything even remotely like this. And people were kind of thinking it was ridiculous to try and write academically about Michael Jackson in the first place. There'd been some
Yeah.
journal articles, but no real academic books.
Yeah, but they're so used to all the tabloid nonsense.
The fluff, yeah.
And social was already well underway with all the fake nonsense and exemplifying and enlarging things that are minor or not even true. And I remember that you went on this, and I read every essay in this book and annotated it for you. And we had so many discussions about how and why and where, and we get further into this. But it is unique. You wrote 21 unique and compelling chapters. And together they form a book that reads, well, I have to say, I haven't read it for a long time, and yesterday I had to travel, and I started reading again. I almost stepped out in the wrong station because I was so much into the book. It reads so well, and I was kind of happily, how do you say that? Happily finding new things. And I think that is when you take a distance, that is also important. Sometimes you need to take a distance to find new things in work. And that's, Well, if it is, and it's nice how you say that it's like a walk through the museum. And it's true, because, it is a curation of essays, and they are all portrayals through your vision, and in that way they give people who read this a deep insight into what they could make out of Michael Jackson and see him as an artist.
Yes.
And I think that is the most important thing, because up until then it was Joe who wrote the only book on his art. We had one other, a German, and that was a philosopher, Jochen. Jochen?
Yeah, Jochen.
And then his surname?
Ebmeyer.
Ebmeyer, yeah. And 2014, Susan Fast came with Dangerous. But that's a very small part, it's just one album. And you reach, his life, his afterlife, or his personas and his music. And you go into depth in all the things. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so should we go into the chronology?
Yeah, so Michael Jackson selected chronology, and it's interesting because your chronology runs from 1958 to 2016, and since then, what shifts, if any, have changed the way Jackson is being studied or interpreted?
Um, so the chronology is really, really important because what we were looking for was something that translates to kind of a biographical text. We're looking for, and like we're still looking for, I am still personally looking for an academic biography of Michael Jackson. It's something I'm really excited and interested in. And it's something I've talked about a lot because we call them the good, the bad, and the ugly. So there's the good ones, the bad ones, and then the ugly biographies. And this was mostly compiled using Grant's visual documentary, and you'll see in the notes. The notes start on page 235. And it's really, really is selected. I wanted to draw your attention to 1988 because that's when Jackson gave his financial contributions to the United Negro College Fund through the Michael Jackson Scholarship Fund. And I think it's really important because Michael Jackson, that's where you should see some like Michael Jackson's really academic connection to like the arts and to academic work. And that United Negro College Fund was very, very important. And then also Michael Jackson's publication of his second book in 1992, Dancing the Dream, and the fact that he was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize in 2003. I think that was really, really important as well.
I never
Um,
got that, right?
yeah, which is really sad because I
Yeah.
think he definitely deserved it. He was such an advocate for peace and harmony. Um, yeah, so we fast forward, and then we go to what Karen was talking about, 2016 to now. So 2016 to now, oh gosh, 10 years. So much has happened. So much has happened in the last 10 years. If we start from now and we work our way back, we can talk about the Michael movie, which is, really reigning at the moment at the discussion of this podcast, the recording of this podcast. And then you have 2025 and 2019, there was the whole Leaving Neverland stuff, which was does impact the reception of Jackson. So we have two competing narratives about Michael Jackson, which happened in his lifetime and still going on posthumously. So I think it's really important to just mention that. And then we had 2024 was a very important year because Dangerous Philosophies was published in paperback by Bloomsbury. And in 2023, it was published in online digital collections by Bloomsbury as well. So that was very, very important. In 2022, we had Edith Cashmore's The Creation and Destruction of Michael Jackson. 2021 was the publication of Quandary, Michael Jackson, The Quandary of a Black Identity. 2020 was a bit of a quiet year. I don't have anything down for that. But for 2019, for 2017, we had republications of books that were written by Joseph Vogel. So we had Michael Jackson and the Reinvention of Pop, Michael Jackson and the Art of Compassion. There was also the vintage edition of Man in the Music, which was the new
Yeah,
edition, which
the
was
new
like sort of,
edition. Yeah, he added some interviews he still had lying around from the first research he did. Um, but I would mention also in 2026, just before the Biop came out, was also a Joe Vogel book.
yeah, and then also with MJRA was 2025. I had to mention that too, volumes one and two. Michael Jackson's Violent
Oh,
Community,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Also that, yeah,
yeah, by
yeah,
Willis Stewart.
yeah.
We've got loads of episodes on all of that stuff. There's lots of references for you to listen to. We're not going to go into any of that here
No,
today,
no, no, that's not for
but
today. But you can listen to a lot of things that we already covered in other episodes. Also,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Okay. Um,
yeah. And
so
and you know, um, academically wise, so we leave out the biopic, we leave out Neverland, and even Joe's books, they are not academic as such. After You, there was just Michael Jackson and the Quandary of a Black Identity.
And there's also a book, oh, academically speaking.
Academically speaking,
Yeah, it was just
there's
Quandary.
not that much.
Yeah.
And I think there was one we did a podcast about, but that is about the Industrial Revolution.
And it
But
was about
there you have the feeling
industrialization.
like that has nothing to do with Michael Jackson. It doesn't connect, but it's easy to use him.
It's the Judith Era book.
Yeah, that was her PhD. Which was strange because she's a dancer, or she was a dancer, and we thought it will be about dance, but it wasn't that much about dance. But even that we covered in a review in the podcast. So the introduction, we start in part 1, Art as Life. And this section focuses on Jackson's artistic output. It is investigative in that it seeks to deeply consider aspects of Jackson's work that may have been overlooked in the past. It also engages with the current body of discourse on Jackson's creative output and draws links to cultural, film, and literary theory and criticism. So the introduction uses the phrase, and it's the title, Reading, Writing and Rewriting Michael Jackson. Now, for listeners who are not coming from an academic background, what is actually meant by rewriting in this context?
Rewriting just means researching. There's just very little research on Michael Jackson. It just means research.
It just means research.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it means. Like,
Okay.
it's so simple. It's so simple. Like, actually do your research, write about Michael. You're rewriting him for audiences and for readers.
Yeah.
Because
No, my initial thought was rewriting is do your research, write about him, and rewrite the
narrative.
negative narrative that is going around and is in generally more known than the good things.
By
Am I far from
researching,
that?
no, you're not far at all. But by researching Michael, you're rewriting him.
Yeah.
Really are. Because so many. Because I say in the introduction that there were so much words written about Michael, so many, and there's so many of them are negative, and so many of those words were uninformed. So when you research Michael Jackson, you will generally find a lot of new interpretations and insights that comes through.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to encourage readers to do that work
Yeah.
because it just takes a few of them out there and listeners to make all the difference.
They do. And it's he deserves that, isn't it?
He does, he does.
And his work. Yeah. And so you work with a cultural materialist approach here. What does that framework allow you to see in Jackson that other approaches might miss?
It's interesting because I've moved kind of away from too much of a cultural materialist perspective. But at the time of writing the book, I was doing a master's degree. So that was very much about where I was at the time. It looks at cultural materialism, looks at each of the works Michael Jackson created as artifacts.
Mm-hmm.
And those artifacts have provenance and they tell us something about culture and society. And so I was inspired by A Man in the Music, Dangerous, Susan Fast Dangerous, and also a book called Francesca Royster's Sounding Like a No-No.
Yeah.
It sounds and eccentric acts in the post-soul era, as well as Things of Darkness, Economies of Race and Gender in Early Modern England, and Worldwide Shakespeare's. So it was a melting pot, like mixing together, synthesizing, in order to create an academic voice an academic tone and voice in which to discuss Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but that is a very clear methodology, isn't it? And
It is for this book.
Yeah, when we talk academic, there are many methodologies.
Yeah.
But you need to have a methodology. You need a framing, otherwise you go everywhere and you can create a theory and just shoehorn that in. But that is what academic work and academic writing does. You need to have a framework, and that can be in many ways. And you say, okay, I see it as an artifact. Well, in fact, when you look at art itself, and paintings or something like that, you have the same. We never call it cultural materialist approach, but you look at the work, you look at the provenance, etc. And it places this also in the context of the time and the culture, cultural time at the time, cultural history of the time. Something that, by the way, also Joseph Vogel did really well in Man and the Music.
Yes. Each album is taken in turn and really looked
Yeah,
at
and also
the
placed in a cultural history. Yeah,
context
yeah,
of its production, its reception, what was happening at the
exactly.
time,
Yeah,
different
yeah,
ideas around it.
yeah.
And then also each item is taken as a specific creative work of art, specific project, and it's really looked at in detail. And all of them are given, every album of his solo adult albums, the seven of them, are even all given equal focus, which is very important.
Yeah,
It's very,
yeah,
very important.
yeah, yeah. And coming from an early modern background, what drew you to read Jackson through conceptual similarities with a figure like Shakespeare?
I don't really come from an early modern background. I suppose I have a master's in early modern English literature, but my BA was in film studies, creative writing, and drama production. So my background is really in theatre arts, drama production. So really what I was looking at is performance, and Shakespeare is like the king of that. And Michael Jackson is an heir to that kingdom of performance. So
Yeah,
really, it was just really obvious to me. I suppose coming from as an early modernist, people might find this a bit unusual to compare Shakespeare to Michael Jackson, but I don't think it is because they're both geniuses.
and
So
both also created for masses, isn't it? They
yeah,
just created for everyone and not just for select. Well, it's what Joseph writes in his foreword. Michael Jackson didn't have a specific niche.
yeah, he did. He wasn't going to be limited by a
No,
niche,
no, no,
by specifically just black music, just a
exactly.
black artist. He wanted
Yeah,
to be more than just a niche artist. He wanted to
yeah,
be a universal artist for
yeah,
everyone.
for
And he believed
everyone.
that his music could translate to all audiences. And that belief is something he really kind of aspired to and he really brought to fruition, which I think is kind of magic. It was Michael's magic. Um,
Oh, that
yeah.
is absolutely his magic because there are not many artists who are able to do that. That needs a specific way of thinking and feeling, and I write about that, to be honest, in a biography type of thing. But it is very interesting. You say you can actually study him on very different levels. You can study him on a level of poetry, fashion, live performances, collaborative materials, etc. Music, film. So you take everything and then dissect it.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So then you distinguish between primary and secondary sources in your research. Given the unevenness in Jackson's scholarship, you point to in earlier, how did you navigate at that time the available material when constructing your argument? Or maybe I should rephrase, how did the balance between available primary material and existing scholarship shape the argument you were able to build?
I just want to quote the book because it talks about um, It says this book uses the following primary sources: musical compositions, interviews, books, articles, performances produced by Michael Jackson in life. Posthumously released works are not used as primary sources. However, some demos are occasionally referred to. The secondary sources include monographs, edited collections, journal essays, news, and blog articles that focus chiefly on Jackson's art, life, and cultural significance. The use of secondary sources is a form of recognition of wider discourse in which this book exists. Throughout the chapters that follow, all albums and songs performed, written, composed, arranged, or recorded by Jackson during his lifetime and released in Jackson's life are considered canon. Posthumously released songs are not. So as a result, songs that have been altered or revised after Jackson's death are used sparingly. I
Yeah.
think it's really
Yeah.
important that we have a distinction
Yeah.
between the lifetime work and the posthumous work.
Yeah.
I think the quality of the work is in the lifetime work. And everything that is produced posthumously is fine for its time. It's absolutely fine. Okay, so it's what the estate has chosen to do. However, I do think that there is some sort of tension between the two, and there shouldn't be, because what's canon is what's canon, and what comes
Exactly.
after is what
Yeah.
comes after.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
an appendix. It's
Yeah, you
posthumous.
can't. And that is a very important point you make, because um, everything he signed off is his art. Period. And you can't just, whether you're the estate or not, say, okay, we are going to do something with it because we want it different now because the audience has changed, or we think the audience changes, younger or whatever. He created a solid amount of work. That's his canon. Period.
Yeah.
And
there's nothing wrong with
everything else of demo versions or whatever they want to make is not his art. That is, I would say, I always say it's the same as in classical music. Work that is not finished by composer and then finished by someone else is always mentioned. This is by Mozart, for instance, finished by Gallieri. Or, if they rework it, it's an arrangement made by, but the original is from. And I think that's very important. Also, with an artist like Michael Jackson, because he is actually very unique within what we say pop culture. I don't think he was a pop musician. He was walking the tightrope of high and lowbrow art, but there's too much tempering.
Because I'm coming now, this is the bit where I put my early modernist hat on. So I was
Okay.
talking about how much I was like a drama production person, theatre performance person. But when you look at early modern, it really shows you that that tampering is also part of the story. It's just been done before, and it will be done again, and it's being done now with Michael's work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's not necessarily something to be worried about, as long as academically there is discussion of what's happening. There's an academic discussion
That it
around.
is very clear what's happening, because it was not. For instance, the estate uses an original film that was shot in 4:3, and they create 19:6, or what is it? What is that format? The film format now. That takes out the authenticity of what it was, and it gives the sense that the work doesn't have the authenticity anymore of what Michael Jackson was able to create within the technical constraints of that time. And that is something we really need to talk about, and we really need to bring to the table, always.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's a really important approach.
Yeah, exactly. So, the next chapter will be for the next episode. That will be a critical survey of Michael Jackson studies. I really look forward to that one.
It'll be
And
very
we talk
dense, guys.
Hmm?
Very dense.
Very dense, but very good and very important, because then you get the spine of the work.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, we have started with the first episode, and I'm proud of you, Liz, 10 years in, and it's
Still doing it. Still going.
so relevant, so relevant. And I look forward, by the way, because you're in your PhD and you can't share that much. And I know you're sitting on hot coals because you want to so desperately, but you're not allowed yet. And that is completely correct. That's how it works in the academic world. But I'm really looking forward to new publications by you. First of all, your PhD itself, of course, and then everything else you will produce after
Yeah,
that.
it's very exciting. It's a very exciting time. But as you talked about sitting on hot coals, like for me, it's like it's you conceive of an idea and then you have to bring that idea to term. And I really like this process of enjoying the process of bringing the ideas to fruition and to term. So I think that when they're ready, they'll be revealed to the world, and that's really best way it should be.
Great. Okay. Then thank you all for listening. This was All for Love, and
Take care of
stay
yourself.
tuned for the next one.
Bye.
Bye.